I'll begin by saying that there is a warning on the syllabus about Long Black Song because in this story, at the pivotal moment in this story is the question of rape. And there is a description of a scene, there's a description of a moment in the story in which the question does arise about rape. And in fact, the reason that we have this moment of incredible violence at the end of the story is because one of the characters, the main character in the work, believes that his wife has been abused and attacked by a white man. And it's a very, 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 very difficult moment because there is a sense in which he believes she's been attacked, but he also blames her for her complicity in that moment. So our key characters in this story are, of course, Silas, who is the good man, the heroic black man, the tragic heroic black man, and then of course there is his he has a daughter called Ruthie, and he has the key character in the work who is essentially must contend with the experience of being torn between her husband and what her husband thinks and what her husband feels, being torn between that and her trying to live in a race driven society and a humanly difficult society. So it's a very it begins, of course, with a moment of bucolic peace. She is in her home, a home that they own, a home that they own, and she has a child, and the child is crying and making noise, and she's caring for that child, and we're seeing everything from her perspective. But in the meantime, she starts to have this fantasy about a relationship that she had, not with her husband Silas, who is away. And where is Silas? Silas is out in in town, where he's attempting to sell his cotton, and with the hope that he will bring back enough money, he'll buy something nice for her, and he'll bring back money for them. He's not a sharecropper. He owns his land and he owns his property. He's his own self, and this is massively important. And 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 she is waiting for him to return, and while she's waiting for him to return, she's remembering a past relationship with a man called Tom, and she's daydreaming, and it's a quite sexual dream, and it's a dream that begins to reference her experience, and it uses language, very interesting language, that will come back later on in the piece. There's no point in sort of rehearsing every detail about how the story unfolds, but what we do know is that eventually, while she's there, a man comes, a white man comes to sell the family, with the man not there, a graphophone. This is a sort of like a record player, but a different, but an old vintage of the graphophone. She says she doesn't think he would want to buy it, and so on and so forth. But there's this interesting dynamic that happens between them. It's a very interesting dynamic that takes place between them. And Sarah seems attracted to him. She seems attracted to this white man, but she feels as if there's something that would not allow her to be able to deal with him. The long and short of it is that we do have an incident that takes place, and it's a violent incident because, of course, she keeps saying no, no. And if we read it carefully, he chases her, follows her into her apartment, and they have sex with each other. So of course, in that moment, we have the return of Silas. And when Silas returns, he discovers an item of clothing that the white man has left. And he becomes convinced that she has betrayed him, and that they've, of course, have had relations. He explodes. And when the man who comes, the man returns because he comes for his money for the graphophone, we get this incredible situation where Silas attacks him. He kills a white man. And then what follows is a posse of white men decide to come to punish him for doing so. And he decides that he's going to stand up to them. Now, he takes a whip on that white man. It's quite violent. And then there's this standoff. She runs out into the bush with the child as he demands. And he's in the house. And what we see at the end is this. They start to burn the house, and he stays in there and dies in the house. But before that, he manages to kill some of the white men. So one of the real sort of core questions that we are left with is, who is this man, and what is Richard Wright's point of empathy in this story? Is his empathy towards Sarah? Because, of course, Sarah is the one who, out of her mouth comes the phrase long black song. And what she says is that all my life, dealing with race and dealing with this man in my life becomes this long black song, because of course she's looking before her and she sees that her husband is going to be killed. Her husband is going to be killed because of a circumstance in which she got caught up in. And the real question is, when that white man comes to her home, does she have a choice in that situation? Does she have a choice in that sexual confrontation? But what Wright does is he complicates it. He really complicates the situation, because in a sense, Wright chooses not to make the sexual encounter explicitly one of rape. He even suggests that in her there is a response to this man. He uses the same language that was used when in her fantasy with Tom. Yet the actual articulations of her and the man are constantly one of her saying no to him and him insisting that he impose himself on her. Richard Wright then is doing something quite sophisticated and quite delicate. And it's something that I want to talk a little bit more about in the third part of this talk.